Jan, Owen, can I start with you? In terms of, we've heard interestingly about recognising a broader skill set among young people, getting beyond the ATAR and traditional academic markers. What do you see as the biggest barrier to implementing this broader definition of success at scale across vet and secondary education, right?
Thanks, Helen. Good morning, everybody. I think there's a couple of things that are worth delving into on that question. Number one is we just did a report from Learning Creates Australia, which is a title of an organisation and a statement all at one. And we found out that we were leaving $22 billion on the table over a lifetime earnings for young people because exactly what we were told before, that we're not kind of connecting IQ and EQ, and I would say AQ, but that's the name of my business, so that makes sense, to really understand what are those broad set of skills that young people need, and how do we articulate what they're capable of? How do we have a learning system that says not just your academic standards and your results, but which are very narrow, as we now know, and very narrowly I think assessed through ATAR, that kind of cliff that young people face. But if we were to broaden that, we would have a very, very different view about young people, what they know and can do. And then if we added to that, what are they capable of and can we help them understand what they're capable of, then we're talking about a really different group of young people coming into the system. So that's a barrier. The other barrier is how we think about this. I did some research with my friendly AI, and I found out that in the last 5 years there were 71,000 articles about schools, TAFE and universities, media articles in Australia. 96% of them were incredibly negative about the whole system. 4% were like, it's okay. So at the narrative level, in the public eyes, parents...
We need to do something.
We think that it's really bad. Yeah. We think that our system's really terrible, just in the general public. So I think we're up against it at a kind of a narrative level that we also need to think about.
Yeah, you talk about the importance of vocational qualifications within school. We've been talking about this for such a long time, and now it's starting to happen. It's starting to happen within the educational environment. Universities are starting to say, if you've got a Cert 3, come on in, come on down. So that we are breaking down those silos. We've been talking about it for 25 years. It's starting to happen. Just real quickly, what does good look like within that? As I think Melinda was saying, that longer pathway we need to build now between education and the world of work, if the robots are doing some of the entry-level work, right?
Well, entry levels at high risk, like very high risk. So where do young people get their first starts? Where do they get their foot sort of into the environment? Is at great risk at the moment. I think we're all talking about that. But I think we need to change the language. So instead of education training, I talk about learning. We talk about long life learning, not lifelong learning, because it's over a long period of your life. There are some great examples around the world. We don't need to innovate. Imitation is okay.
And so where are you thinking of?
All over the world. So whether you're talking about Singapore, where you're getting a voucher now to spend
$5,000
as you want, whether you're talking
everybody gets that.
Everybody gets that
on anything.
On
so I could go and do the why doesn't ChatGPT give me good ideas like it does for everybody else? I can go sit in a class.
You can go and do anything you like. You can do basket weaving through to AI literacy. I love that in the Scandinavian countries, and in Germany, we've talked about this a lot. Craig also talks about this a lot, but you leave school with a qualification. So you leave with something that you have trained in, not just an ATAR. Yeah. So you've done something, a Cert 3, a Cert 4, a diploma in something.
There you go.
So you feel confident, Ellen, that you could do something in the world, not just have to go on to further.
And you're not in the fetal position having done 7 ATAR subjects.
For instance.
Yes. As I say to all Year 12, you will never work this hard and insanely again. Except perhaps if you work for Westpac. Did you see their headlines? They want senior staff in on weekends and the CEO says he works Christmas Day. Fun guy.
That's their AI CEO, isn't it?
Yeah. Craig, talk to me about this reform agenda. I think what the Minister is starting to talk about is going back and fixing up the system, which is the slow work of building a good system, versus the faster work, as we heard in the very beginning of all of this, of we need to go faster with updating the training systems to meet the moment.
I'll talk about two things. One is the Minister is completely right about the transformation embodied in the principle and the National Skills Agreement. It's no longer the Commonwealth saying, here's how it shall be done and here's the price I'm going to attach to it. It's a collective effort, and that's quite a strong sense in that, which then puts at the front of that states and territories with a stronger say about the skilling system and the like. Because after all, we're the ones that are trying to grow our communities, we're trying to grow industries, etc., so that we can maintain Victoria as the premier state in Australia.
If you say so.
Just need to put that in. When we face this productivity challenge, is we've fundamentally got a structural problem, and we've got a great structure at the moment because when we implemented it, it was around award restructuring when you open up our barriers, our trade barriers, and it allowed a lot of people to have their skills recognised and the like. With AI and the whole change that's going on, we need to adapt that. The way I think about it is, if we think about VET as a 6-level building, we've got on those buildings, the sub 2 floors are for, we sometimes think about for certificate 1s and 2s are for people that aren't quite capable. That's how we sometimes view that. And then we've got the other floors, right? Level 3, certificate 3 for diploma, advanced diploma.
Now that needs a rethink.
Yeah, and then what we've got in there is 10 lanes for 10 jobs and skills councils, right? And we've got lots and lots of product on sale that really nobody buys. And if I wanted to go in there and say, I wanted to go to Good Chip Vet and buy a new coffee machine, I'd probably go in and say, well, look, sorry, on this floor you can only get the kettle but you've got to go to another floor to get the coffee. And if you want a coffee machine, because that's got piping in it, you'd have to go somewhere else. Whereas individuals are chasing integration, right? Now, that doesn't mean that industry and industry skills are not important, but there's a lot of convergence going on. So structurally, we've got to do something around our qualification system and how we teach, how we structure that. That's the big productivity dividend. And I can keep going, but I know you want to go on to others, so I'll let you go.
To just be a bit of an agent provocateur, if you can. Again, the Federation, not how you'd do it if you had your druthers. To what extent are we stuck with a sort of centralised command and control national qualification system, and how much does that slow down innovation and the kind of nimble change and adaptation we need?
So you're being fed these questions from the floor somewhere, but so the real challenge that VET's got is we've got a lot of specification in our units, where originally it was around aiming for a standard and giving flexibility at the local level. We've got to clean some of that up, still aim for standards that are relevant for people to get good jobs and to grow in good jobs. We've just got to free the system up a bit. And so the power of the Jobs and Skills Councils is to be able to say, by the by, this is the change coming down the pipeline in terms of work and production processes and the like. Then we go, then how do we adapt our teaching and learning to go with it? If I want to be controversial, I would almost strip training packages away from Jobs and Skills Councils and try to think about something different, but nevertheless leverage off the engagement, connection, understanding that Jobs and Skills Councils bring us about this is what's going on in the labour market. Now, I know that wouldn't be a very popular approach, but we've got to come together differently to create more responsive, flexible learning.
And how do we do that, Natalie? And how do you move as quickly as needed?
If I wanted to be controversial, Craig, I might be with Ellen when we talk about the Federation, mightn't I? Look, I think it's unfair to use the language of command and control, right? The whole point of the Jobs and Skills Councils, which are, I don't know, are you guys 2 years old even yet? Remember, this is This is a new part of architecture and system. And so when Minister Giles talks about the things this government's done, National Skills Agreement, focus on stewardship, first in a long time, to get the system, state and federal, working together. Fee-free TAFE, Jobs and Skills Australia, Jobs and Skills Council. Forgive me, shit's been happening. It is very much at a systems level. So I can understand the kids at school going, well, it still feels the same to me. Everyone's telling me I've got to get this ATAR thing. What's that all about? And so we do need to bring the humans and the systems together. But part of the point of Jobs and Skills Council is it's connected deeply into industry. So, I mean, ask yourself the question if you're studying, I don't know, an economics degree at university, where that industry link is. So the Jobs and Skills Councils are very much designed to have that industry interface, tripartite, and expertise around the room. And events like this, we're here because the FSO has brought us together, so Craig can be on the stage and be controversial and pose controversial questions. And so the Jobs and Skills Councils, while we talk about architecture and systems, are the beginning of that. The other thing I would say is FSO. So these are big old systems and they've served us well, but they do need to evolve. They're not going to change overnight. So we can look at it, Ellen, and say this federation thing, yes. We have to work in the world that we're in.
Yes.
And what I see FSO doing, for example, is at the cutting edge of this. Because, and I am going to refer to notes here because I'm not deeply involved in your training product trial that will trial and evaluate simultaneous delivery of training to learners in key areas at the same time the accreditation is happening, right? So that's classic pilot, learn, refine. Within this clunky system, they're doing it. And that's part of the training package framework, focusing on AI and cyber skills in the ICT area, but also looking at building those generalist digital and AI skills in more generalist quals like business services training package. So the system is doing this. But we're in the early days. These organisations are a couple of years old and FSO is doing this and they are doing it in close connection with industry and other stakeholders. So I think what we need to acknowledge and showcase is these sorts of examples. We need to see what we learn from them, what works, what doesn't, and continue to refine. And other Jobs and Skills Councils are no doubt doing similar. I'm only up on the latest on this one because I'm here today, but there are other JSC CEOs in the room and they will also have stories along these lines. And the thing about that is that we are drilling into the things we most need now, digital and AI. So we're not trying to reform the entirety of these big old systems. We're being very targeted and focused based on what the JSCs tell us we most need now through that very methodical approach of their workforce planning. So I think while we're kind of beating up on ourselves and the systems, we need to really call out that the evolution reform is going on within the system. We need to kind of continue to incubate and showcase and support that and share those stories because there is a potential, I think, or a tendency for a bit of learned helplessness to kick in here. It's also damn hard. Well, it is, but what are you going to do about it? FSO is doing something about it. So well done, and we're watching closely to see what we can learn.
Melinda, turn to you, and this is interesting to get into the minds of the policymakers who are trying to work, as we've just heard Natalie say, within a clunky system. That's the system that we've got, right? But your call to action is really that industry can't stand by with crossed arms and go, well, how's that getting on? How's that getting on? And have a system where increasingly their training profile looks like compliance rather than future-proofing and upskilling, right?
Oh, that's a big question. Look, let me just pull out a couple of key themes that I think...
If you could bring the mic closer, yeah.
Sorry, there we go. Let me pull out a couple of key themes that I sort of talk a bit about across almost everything I do at the moment, and I think kind of sit at the heart of all of this. So firstly, I don't see a future where business and government have to work more closely together. I mean, every trajectory in our future has to see business and government working more closely together. And we've got to find ways to do that, and we've got to find ways to do that at a pace that we're not doing at the moment. Now, we've got this challenge of, in the education, training, learning sector, we all know is a legacy system designed for an industrialised world that doesn't exist anymore. And how do we change that? And we really have to change that, right? So firstly, business and government and others have to work really close together. We have to figure out, and unions, and we have to figure out how to do that. And one of the things we have to do is put aside some assumed ideas about who the other side of the table is and what they're bringing, right? And I can talk at length about my views on how some of the industry policy stuff is working and the attitudes that government brings to business and vice versa. If we don't shift that, if we don't start focusing on what is the outcome we really want to achieve and how do we get there and how do we get there quickly, and that is everyone actually, as I said in my comments, focusing on what do we agree on rather than what do we disagree on. The second point is how do we think about risk? We are way, way, way too risk averse, right? And we actually have to acknowledge that. And everyone in the system, from politicians down, has to acknowledge that you cannot govern your way, you cannot regulate your way out of every risk. We are pretending that we are managing risk and we are actually not doing that. And we are going to have to take some risk. And that means some grown-up conversations about what the real risk actually is and when something goes wrong, how do we deal with it? Because at the moment, across every aspect of almost everything, we are pretending that we are managing risk or removing risk when we're not. We're just pushing it to the side or hiding it.
It's why it takes longer to get approval to build a house than build a house, right?
Well, 100%. And what skills, I mean, it applies to this conversation as well. You know, we're very, very risk averse and we have these really long processes to prove that we think that someone can actually do something. And I think we really need to change that. And the third sort of big theme that I think we really need to bring to this conversation, we talk at CEDA about you need a strong economy and a strong social compact, right? Those two things must work really, really closely in lockstep. We have let the social compact in this country fray. The Minister spoke to no one gets left behind. We leave people behind every single day. And we are leaving them behind right now. That's my point about the school completion rates for young men.
Right.
Right? We are leaving them behind. We have got to find a way to put people at the centre of this system, the way people learn, what people want to learn. And then we need to get smart and thinking about what have they learned on the way through and where can we apply this. If someone comes and talks to me about their career progression and what they want to do next, I don't say to them, think about a job. I say to them, think about the things you like doing and you're good at doing and where are the 20 other places you can do that. And at the moment, I mean, I'm sorry, I'll stop after this point, but we talk about wanting to improve inclusion and we talk about it as access. Access isn't enough. Right? Access is not enough. If we want First Nations kids studying at school, at TAFE, at universities, we have to think about what makes that a safe and enjoyable place for them to actually study things that they want to study. Just opening the door and saying, please walk through, is not enough. So we've got to think,
Which is as much a message for employers as it is for institutions
100%.
of learning, right? If you've got a disability, you're far less likely in an employee to be using all the skills and potential that you have. You'll end up with something, three layers lower because you're in a wheelchair. I don't know why.
I mean, Jan knows I've said this before as a sort of, I don't understand why you can't feed all of the curriculum from a particular state into a generative AI and let a student design their curriculum. Design their subjects based on what they're passionate and excited about. Why can't we do that?
Let's turn to Jan and Craig in response to the issue around risk, which is sometimes a part of the conversation around quality, right? You cannot ask people to engage in training that isn't quality training. That is a breach of trust, isn't it? So how do you walk that line, Craig and Jan, maybe? She's pointing to you.
Again, so there was a report that ministers agreed to last year about reshaping vet qualifications. And the fact of the matter is that there are still, unfortunately, they're being wiped out of the system by good effort by ASQA, so there's no doubt about that. there's still too many people in the system that saying that competency and that performance is all I need, and if I can shape everything, then you get that tick and then you get into the job. Then they're disadvantaged, of course, because either ASPA comes in and says, actually, you haven't got those skills, or the employer very quickly finds out they haven't got it. There's been a variety of attempts about trying to do this. My sense is that we need to really build the educational intent into our qualifications a lot more clearly. Remember, we're an outcome system that allows for a lot of this to occur, and ASQA will always be chasing its tail. This latest episode of providers, I could count the cycle. Right? We've had that cycle for a long period of time. Sure, give ASQA a whole pile more money, but, sure. But what happens then is, in trying to do all of the specification to prevent that, we compromise good providers with the intent of doing the good thing for students and for industry, for that matter. So I just think we make the bar, the entry to be a provider a lot higher, and it's around your educational credentials,
All right.
essentially.
There you go. Jan?
I think there are some really good examples where providers and industry have joined up, and I think that's the way forward, number one. Number two, I think we just need to look at facts and data. We have a terrible, Minister Giles referred to it but didn't say the report that he's looking on his table, but we have a really poor outcomes around traineeships and apprenticeships in terms of their attention. So we've got things that are failing everywhere, and that's to your risk point. They're already failing. So what's actually the risk here? So controlled experiments like FSO are doing with new digital skills, I would like to see a lot more of those. We can handle those. We can handle small controlled experiments, introduce new ideas. I think we're in this very strange time, Ellen, where we've got pace because of AI, but forgetting that actually things take time to build. I run and own 2 small businesses. It takes time to build a business. It takes time to actually get people in, to train them, to then work with industry about what you need, to get earn and learn programs. It takes an enormous amount of time and money from a business perspective to actually engage in this. Big business can do it because they're big business, but remember, Australia isn't all big business. 80% of people in Australia work in small businesses like mine. So it's actually incredibly challenging to engage in these debates at that level. And they feel a long way away, to be honest, and in Canberra often. So there's a different model of how do you work with a group of businesses in some sector, in some domains, and try some new things. And FSO are doing that. We've got a couple of projects with FSO going around human capabilities. We've got the digital one. I would like to see that across all the jobs and skills councils. What are the things we're saying? And then how are we, to my narrative point, how are we telling people in Australia, the general public, wow, we're trying these amazing new projects, new projects. Some will fail, some will survive, but they're incredible, and Australia is moving forward, not standing still and trying to have this ridiculous ongoing circular debate around what's our system and how do we change the system. And to your point, Nat, we just sort of start to kind of lean into failure.
And Natalie, maybe final point to you, because we're up against morning tea. Is that what you're talking about when you're saying try, experiment, review, etc. at that level? Are they the sorts of ideas you're having within the department?
Absolutely. Although I will also say the best ideas will not be driven by the bureaucrats. The best ideas will be driven by people in this room. It is the job of me and my department to have our eyes open and our ears receptive to those different ideas, because there is a tendency when you've been in these systems for a long time to feel like you've seen it all before, or it's all very hard, or we do spend a lot of time responding to things coming at us, so the time to actually dream up new ideas for us doesn't seem to exist so much anymore. But it is, I think, about people in this room, unions, employers, industry groups, experts and regulators being able to come together and work out where can we try something different within some boundaries, test boundaries, if it doesn't work, we'll learn from it and no one will die. And the no one will die part is important, because when we talk about speeding up stuff, and I mean, I hate to be the naysayer, but there are the thinking behind regulation is not always bad. The way regulation comes out, and the Productivity Commission is rightly focusing on the layers of different sources of regulation, is not always helpful. So if you're trying to build a thing or get occupational licensing, there's a lot of complexity there. But the reasons behind the regulation are often to make sure workers don't die, or to make sure the thing that's being installed doesn't fritz out and set your house on fire, or to make sure your children are safe in childcare. So we do need to remember that in trying to speed things up, that we're not losing the things that we as a community care about, and standards we have long set in this country when it comes to worker safety and community safety. And so I do think it is about people bringing things in and us creating the space to innovate, to trial, to learn, and then upscale. And even our colleagues in state governments are doing a little bit of that and driving that. And it doesn't surprise me that they would think of where to do that best first, because the states are running these systems and closer to the schools, the parents, and the communities and industry.
Melinda?
Ellen, can I just jump in on that? I mean, I think I agree wholeheartedly, but I think one of the things we have to focus on is that regulation itself doesn't always get you the best outcome. And we have to be really, really, really clear on the outcome. And I think the point about...
Childcare is a great example.
And the point
right?
about...
We've got a big focus on quality, but the focus needed to be on safeguarding. And we haven't done that. Every day you open the paper and you see we're not doing it. So there's a whole bunch of regulation that doesn't get the outcome that you want. It has
to be a focus on the outcome and not the process. And you have to really interrogate what's the outcome and what's your level of confidence. And on the experimentation piece, I've had so many conversations with government wearing different hats where the answer is no. And I think we have to talk about what is this is my point about risk. When you say set the parameters, I mean, I think you have to go risk and opportunity. If this works, what's the opportunity? Whereas what the focus is so much now is there's risk, there's risk, there's risk. And I'm going to be really honest, no one wants to surprise their minister or upset their minister, and no one wants their minister to have to defend a dollar that was spent that didn't work. We have to change that.
Which is as much about the media culture as the political culture, as the community culture, because this all comes out of abundance and some thinking that's come from that, is that you do get on the talkback line people saying, but, you know, I want you to regulate the heck out of something so that, you know, I don't buy into one of those unit blocks, da-da-da-da-da. And it's kind of like, what unit blocks? We didn't build any yet, you know? So there's this really interesting tension going on in our media, in our public squares, in Canberra certainly, and in state capitals too, about where that opportunity and how do we bend more towards that opportunity. But I think you're right, it's a question we need to be asking of everybody, right? What are we prepared to tolerate, and what's the opportunity cost of over-regulation and over-emphasis on the no rather than the yes? Yeah. Anyone else want to conclude? Anyone desperate to say anything?
I just wouldn't mind adding about AI, because there's been a lot of conversation already about AI, and some of the reflections have been really relevant to the higher education sector. But if we really think about vocational education, I could be accused of exaggerating here, but essentially vocational education is about doing things knowingly with objects, whether that is a person, a physical object or whatever. So in fact, I would say that AI will be a great tool but won't be a replacement. And this is part of the vet renaissance that I think is facing us, because some other areas will be undone, but a good practitioner knows their stuff, has their skill, will be really valuable in the Australian labour market. So in vet, we should see AI as the opportunity for great flourishing for the vet learning model, is the way I see it.
I would just like to put a sort of a call out to industry to really embrace what young people are going to bring. I think there's a lot of talk about young people coming in underprepared, not future ready, etc. But I think if we looked a little bit under the surface, kind of lift the bonnet a bit. Number one, they're not scared about AI, obviously. They do care about ethics. Every single bit of research globally and in Australia, when young people asked about AI, they care about ethics. They're not worried about the tool, they're not worried about using it, they're not worried about cheating, they're worried about the ethics of AI in society. So let's just understand what's coming into the market. There is a group of young people, they've already done bypass. 40% of young people already go to uni without a degree. They're already getting all kinds of qualifications and credentials, whether they're micro-credentialed or not, in all walks of life and the things they're doing. What they need though, what they absolutely need is to get an entry-level role, to have a part-time job, even if it's a hustle, a side hustle, which many have. Actually, we need to acknowledge that side hustle. We need to give it some kind of status so that you can know if a young person's been a volunteer, if they've worked at Macca's, if they've been at the footy club, that means something, that we can articulate what they know and can do. And that's on the school system, but also it's on the rest of the system to say, yes, we understand in TAFE, in university, and also in the job market, we understand what you know and can do. And then we want to say, we want to show you what you're still yet capable of. That's the promise, that's the social compact, and not for some young people, but for every single young person. Bypass is already happening because at the leafy schools, as we call them, you can do that. You can pick up the phone and do the deals and find the jobs. I'm worried about the rest of the 4 million children and young people in school, and I think industry, I don't want government to do it or Nat. I actually want industry, I want myself as an employer to have the opportunity to lean into those young people and say, you have a place here, you are part of our future as our company, we're an intergenerational workforce, we value you, we know you bring different things, but we also know you want advice and mentoring and support, all the things that the rest of the workforce give you, and knowledge. So let's just understand that our future is very, very, very integrated with them, but let's follow what they're doing. I don't think we spend enough time actually analysing what are they doing, how are they learning, how are they actually showing up, how are they going about their daily lives. We have very little idea, and that's why we get future shock. We always say to them, you're going to get future shock when you go to the workforce. Actually, we're the ones who are getting future shock when they arrive. So let's just understand what it is and what the value is, and if we do that, Ellen, we will meet our productivity agendas, but we'll meet them in a deeply human way that talks about what we want to be and who we want to be as a grown-up country that is genuinely, I think showcasing to the world, we've got a lot of talent. We don't need to kind of always be looking outside. Let's develop what we've got and then let's bring in what else we need to augment that. AI obviously is going to be one of those things.
A wonderful note on which to conclude. Please thank the panel very much. Now, we're sort of back on time. Let's say that we'll come in at 11:05 because it'll take you a little bit, but if we could start back at 11:05. The morning tea is in the atrium and the gallery. If you have dietary restrictions, there is a designated table prepared for you. Just look around and you'll see it. See you back here at 11:05. Thanks.